here to talk about your credit, how to make your credit better, how to improve it, how to stay out of trouble. I'm sure a lot of you who are watching tonight might have a lot of questions and concerns about the recent Equifax breach, and I'm here to talk about that as well. In fact, we can lead off with that. It'll be our top story of the night, the Equifax breach. As you might have heard in the news a couple months ago, Equifax, which is one of the largest consumer reporting agencies, suffered a hack. What that means is some computer whiz got into their system, hacked into it, and got into a number of servers. Equifax is a very large consumer reporting agency that holds a great deal of data about all of us, our names, social security numbers, dates of birth, what credit card companies that we have, what credit we use, where we've lived, all sorts of personal information about us. And Equifax has a number of servers, and they probably have close to 800 million people's information in their servers. And what happened was a hacker got into a section of the servers, not all of them, just a section, and about 143 million people's information were on those servers. What does that mean? That means that their information is vulnerable. It doesn't mean that their information is in the hands of a criminal. It could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It doesn't mean that somebody's committing identity theft as we speak, but again, it could be happening. What's going on, though, is that their information, if your information was on one of those servers, then it was broken into and is potentially in the hands of a wrongdoer. Not 100%, but potentially. And what's going to happen from that is ultimately that hacker or those hackers are going to start selling the information that they got to other people who want to use it for improper purposes, such as opening credit in our names, buying homes, cars, boats, you name it. So if you are a victim of the hack, but you have very bad credit, you probably don't have to worry so much, because after all, if you wouldn't get credit granted to you in the first place, they're not going to grant it to somebody posing as you. But if you have decent credit, well, then that might be a problem, and they might be using your information. Will it happen right away? Are you right now a victim of identity theft? Probably not. It's doubtful that they're going to run out and open credit cards in the name of 143 million people overnight. It will take a long time to distribute that information. It will be sold in the black market. It will be sold on various other markets. Information will be spread out, and it will be years. It will be absolutely years that this information will be out there. So that's the unfortunate truth, ladies and gentlemen. The unfortunate truth is that if you were a part of this hack, you've got a long time to worry about it, unfortunately. And we'll talk about what you need to do. But if you have questions, please call in, ask away. I'm here to help you. Call Credit Talk. It's 312-738-1060. We're here for you. Call anytime. So we'll talk a little bit about what's going to happen and what you should do if you're a victim of this hack. First and foremost, if you haven't heard already, you can go online to Equifax. You can check in and give them your Social Security number, a portion of your Social Security number, and they can tell you if you were potentially a victim of the hack. They're not going to be able to tell you that your information was in fact taken, because we don't really know what these hackers did when they hacked in, aside from get in and get their hands on the information. We don't know if they took it, copied it, downloaded it, and what they did with it. So you're only going to be able to find out that your information was on that server. Now, if it was on that server, Equifax is offering credit monitoring. Now, you might want to buy into that and take it. There are many other credit monitoring services out there. Equifax's is not the greatest one. It's not necessarily the most helpful thing in the world either. There's really nothing better in checking your own credit than going straight to the credit bureaus and getting your credit report. There's really nothing better at all. Besides monitoring is just okay. All it's going to do is advise you when there's been a change in your credit report. But those changes could be your own changes. It might not be the wrongdoer's changes. So that's what those systems do for you. The best thing to do is go get your credit report. Now, you're entitled to one free credit report every year. That is every 12-month period the credit bureaus have to give you a free report. You can get that report by going to annualcreditreport.com. It's a website that all the bureaus put up together where they have to give you your credit report. You can log in there to each of the 3 credit bureaus and get your credit report. You do it once every 12 months. It's an imperative that you do. Even if you weren't a victim of the hack, you should always do that anyway. The credit bureaus are giving you a free credit report. Why not take it and look? You should do it. But if you're a victim of this hack, go to this, get your credit report at annualcreditreport.com. Download it and take a look at it. The first thing you should look at are addresses. That's usually the first thing listed on your credit report too. All the addresses you've lived at. And look at them. Notice if those addresses are all addresses you've lived at or you currently live at. If they're not, if it's not your address, if you see a completely alien address in your credit report, that's a red flag. That's a red flag because there's got to be a reason why it's been reported to you. And usually the only reason why an address shows up in your credit report is because a creditor of yours sent that information in to the credit bureaus as your address. So it would be a red flag. The other thing you want to look for is the inquiries. Now, every single credit report has what's called an inquiry section. And it shows you who has looked at your credit report in the last however long period of time. It's usually 2 years. There are different kinds of inquiries on your credit report. There's what we call hard inquiries. Those inquiries show up in your credit report and they appear as, and it will say on your credit report that these are the inquiries that your creditors can see, and they're inquiries that appear for up to 2 years. Those are the important ones. Those inquiries are inquiries that an actual creditor looked at your credit report because there was an application. So you want to look at those and see, are the inquiries on the credit report those that you've initiated yourself? Did you apply for those credits? And if you didn't, and if you see a very odd inquiry from a company you've never dealt with in your life, well then, that's another red flag. Okay? So those are the 2 things that we're looking for when you get your credit report: addresses and inquiries. And of course, trade lines, those accounts that appear on your credit report. Okay? If you see odd trade lines, obviously there's something that you can do about that as well. If you see these things in your credit report, the first thing you should do is immediately contact the credit bureau and dispute it. Let them know that these items do not belong to you. There's a law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and it says that if you give a dispute to the credit bureaus, you to provide what specific information it is that you're disputing, the credit bureaus will turn around and do an investigation, and they must do it within 30 days. They also must contact the furnisher of that information, that is the creditor that provided them the information, and bring them into the investigation and say to them, hey, this person has a dispute over this information, what do you say? And these responses have to be completed within 30 days. So if you see something on your credit report that's wrong and you want to dispute it, and you do that, you'll have an answer within 30 days. So for those people out there who think if you're a victim of identity theft or there's something wrong with your credit, it's going to be ruined for years, that's not true at all. The credit bureaus have an obligation to conduct an investigation for you. And if they fail to conduct that investigation, you have rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to seek any damages that you may have suffered, as well as attorney's fees and costs. So there's help for you out there, folks. Give us a call at Credit Talk, where it's, again, 312-738-1060, and I'm here until 6:30 to help you. Again, my name's Larry Smith, attorney with Smith Marco. Other things we can talk about. How to protect your credit now that your information's out there. What can you do to prevent it? What can you do to prevent identity theft? The fact is, you really can't prevent it. Okay? Identity theft can't be stopped. What I kind of liken it to is a bank. You've got a bank, and a bank has all sorts of security systems up, right? They have cameras and things behind the counter that prevent robbery, all right? Somebody wants to come in and rob a bank, there's going to be cameras, there's going to be all kinds of things that they can do to catch the person. They can't stop the robbery often, right? You can't stop the person from walking into the bank and making a terribly stupid decision to try to rob it. You can't stop that person from making that decision. The same way, you can't stop a identity thief from trying to use your information. What you can do, though, is correct it after it happens. And that's the unfortunate truth about identity theft, folks, is it's not something that you could actually stop. It's something that you can catch early. That's what credit monitoring does. It catches it early. And that's what reviewing your credit report does. It allows you to see the problem and take action right away. Dispute your credit report. If you're an identity theft victim, what can you do to dispute your credit report? And if you have questions about this, please call in to Credit Talk. I'm here to take your calls. But what can you do when you dispute your credit report and you're an identity theft victim? Well, the first thing to do, I'm telling people that if you were a victim of this Equifax breach and you went on the computer and you saw that on your screen, print that out. Print out the screen that on your Equifax that says that you're that you're potentially a victim. Print that out and save it. That tells whoever you might have to tell down the road, that tells them that you were definitely a victim and this may very well be from the hack. Oh, looks like we have a caller here. All right, caller.
Hi there. I might take you a little bit off subject, but my mom and my oldest sister have the same name. And oftentimes I remember that they would have some issues where different things would come up on each other of their credit reports that wasn't there, but was the other person's. Is there anything that someone can do to prevent something like that happening like that?
Okay, very good question. What you're describing is what we call a merged file. And this happens a lot with all the credit bureaus. People with the same names, similar names, close names with date of birth, and ready for this one, people with 8 of 9 of the Social Security number that are the same. I've seen that too. So those people, that's a merged file. And what happens is, as you can imagine, the information shows up on both people's credit reports. Can you prevent it? Not necessarily from happening in the first place, but you can stop it from when it happens and then stop it going forward. Okay, so let me explain. And I'm going to take you right back to the dispute process. Because whenever it comes to a problem with your credit report, it always starts with the gatekeeper, the credit bureaus. And you have to notify them. And they're very well aware of this problem. It's been one that's been going on for decades. So they're very well aware of it. As long as credit bureaus have been in operation, there have been merged files, and they know. So what you want to do is you want to contact the credit bureaus. I strongly suggest it's done in writing. And you want to provide them a simple statement that says, I am this person, here's my social. My mother is this person, here's her social. If you need to see 2 different driver's licenses, here you go, I'll show you copies of that. The following items do not belong to me, they belong to her. And you list them out. And the credit bureaus, when they see that, it alerts them. Oh, we have a merged file situation here. And they know how to correct the merge. And when they correct a merge, it's supposed to be done in such a way that it doesn't happen again, because your account is alerted, or your file is alerted, that there's somebody out there with a very similar or same name as you that has been merged with you. And so they do a very good job of correcting that the first time through. Sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes your first dispute goes through and it's not successful. Sometimes they're a little slow on that, and regrettably requires legal action, and that's where people like myself come in. But what you talk about is a very common problem, the merged file, and it happens quite a bit out there. You do your dispute, you make it very clear to the credit bureau that there are 2 people here on this report. You let them know what belongs to whom, and very important, the identifying information. People don't look at the addresses and phone numbers that appear on their credit reports. You really should. You really should. And that's what's going to help you when you have a merged file. Okay? Okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for calling. And anybody else who wants to call and ask questions, you're not going to take me off a topic. We're talking about credit. And that was right on topic, talking about credit reports and credit problems. Merged files, identity theft, those are things that happen all the time. Credit bureaus make other mistakes as well. Oftentimes, you might pay off your creditor, and your creditor might not have updated your file. And you ask the credit bureau to investigate that, and maybe your creditor is not quick enough on the uptake and doesn't correct it. That's a problem as well. and we can solve all those problems. So, any more questions about that or about the Equifax breach or anything else about your credit, please give us a call at Credit Talk. Again, I'm Larry Smith from Smith Marco, 312-738-1060. Okay? What else can we talk about credit? How to keep good credit, how to maintain a good credit report. Well, there's a lot of different factors that go into your credit. A credit score is what we're all really concerned about. Sometimes when you apply for credit, the person you're applying to, the future creditor, if you will, they will want to look right at your credit report and actually look at it and see what the items are on there. However, many of them are just score-based. That's all they care about is the score. And if your score meets a certain threshold, then you're perfectly okay. And what goes into your credit score? Well, first of all, we have a caller. Great. Caller.
Hi, I've been working on getting my credit score back up, and it's been going back up slowly but surely. And I was just wondering, if I buy something like a car, is it going to make my credit score go down?
Well, that depends. Now, a credit score is a kind of a moving animal, and it changes all the time. As I was about to say before, credit scores are made up of multiple things. First of all, the first and foremost thing on your credit score is whether or not you pay things on time. And that accounts for a big chunk of what your score is. The next thing that accounts for a lot of your credit score is how much you use your credit. And that's really important. If you have credit cards out there and they're maxed out, that's going to affect your score. If you have credit cards out there and they're not hardly used at all, that's going to help your score. If you have no credit cards, that's going to hurt your score, because the other factor, another one of the factors of your credit, is the type of credit we use. There are different kinds of credit. As I was saying before, some creditors like to look at your credit report for what's on there, but some just like a score. Certain kinds of lenders just want to see what your score is, and one of the things that's going to affect it is the different kinds of credit you have. So if you go out and buy a car, it depends on what shape your credit is in the first place. At the very outset, there are some things that are going to hurt your credit a little bit at the very beginning. First of all, the inquiries. When you apply for credit, it takes your credit down just a little bit. You're kind of telling the credit world that you don't have the cash on hand and you need to borrow. So it just takes you down just a little bit. In addition, you're putting a new account on your credit report. That account has a balance, a total amount owed, and then how much is owed on that total amount. In other words, you have if you took a loan out and the loan is, let's say, $15,000, you're still going to owe $14,500 or whatever it is at the first payment. So that's something that's going to affect you a little bit, but it helps you in that you may have spread out the kind of credit you use. If you have just credit cards, and that's what we call revolving credit. If that's all you have is revolving credit and no installment credit, like an installment loan, like a home or a car, that's going to hurt your score. So if you've added an installment loan where you've had none before, then you're going to help your score a little bit. So all these little parts kind of work together. The most important thing is not to expect that just because you bought the car just now, your credit's going to get better automatically. What's important is you make sure you pay on that car regularly, you don't miss your payments, you get your payments in on time, and slowly but surely over time, not very long, a year, maybe 2 years, you're going to see your credit score really increase a great deal. As long as you're making sure the rest of your credit stays intact. You're paying your bills on time, and you're keeping the balances down. Okay, caller? So thank you so much for that. And I want to talk about that a little bit. The other factors of your credit score. So one thing I mentioned was the paying on time. If you pay your credit on time, according to FICO, Fair Isaac Credit Organization, that's the primary maker of credit scores that we all live for. They attribute 35% of the score to the on-time payment. So that means a lot. Another 30%. Oh, we have another caller. We'll get to that in a moment. Caller.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So what I wanted to know was about the concept of freezing
your credit to help protect your identity. I've seen several articles about that sort of in the wake of everything that's happened with the Equifax breach. I'm not really clear on what exactly that entails, so if you could give me some insight on that, that would be amazing.
Sure, sure. Thanks for the call and good question. A lot of people are calling me for this too and saying, what should I do? Should I freeze my credit? What is a credit freeze? A credit freeze is your absolute right to take your credit offline completely, to not let anybody see it, to decide that you're not going to apply for anything and have it absolutely frozen. If you had frozen credit and you went to try to buy a car, you'd be at the dealership and they would try to punch in your information to get your credit report and they wouldn't be able to. It would come up saying frozen, so you couldn't get the car. You'd have to call up yourself and take the freeze off. And that's what a credit freeze is. What's problematic about a credit freeze, and it's something I'm not going to say don't do it. A credit freeze is something that if you are an active identity theft victim, in other words, you absolutely have knowledge that there's somebody out there that is using your information. And unfortunately, I see this a lot with exes, ex-mates, ex-spouses, ex-partners, whatever it might be. One of them either is bitter or has money problems and wants to get out there on their own and needs money, will use the other person's information. That's a great time to put a credit freeze on because you know specifically that there's somebody out there working it, trying to do it, and the credit freeze will protect you. So that's when you would want to use it. I don't think it's a good idea to just throw a freeze out there out of just general paranoia. The reason for that is currently, your own creditors, if you have credit cards right now, you might notice the other inquiry section on your credit report, which is the account review section. That's where your own creditors are looking at your credit just to make sure that you're still doing okay. Your creditors that you have now, even though you're not reapplying for credit, they have the right to regularly look into your report and see how you're doing. If you've ever received a letter from a creditor that says, hey, we've just decided to decrease your credit line, out of nowhere, that's what happened. What happened was the creditor was doing a regular check, saw something on your report, was very uncomfortable, and decided that you had too much credit with them. If you have a credit freeze, that might be a problem that you run into. You might have the problem of your own credit grantor seeing that you're frozen. They will jump to conclusion as to why you're frozen. They'll think you're an identity theft victim. They'll think that somebody's out there using your credit, and they'll think it's dangerous, and they might want to pull your credit back. So that's what a credit freeze is, caller. A credit freeze is something that stops your credit from being used altogether. And that is something that I would recommend to somebody who is actively going through an identity theft and is quite well aware of it. Okay, so I hope we answered that question for you. We have just a couple minutes left, people out there, so if you have some calls, you have some questions for Credit Talk, for an attorney in credit, please give me a call. I'm here for a few more minutes, 312-738-1060. The time that I have, we'll get back to that credit score stuff that I was talking about, okay? So I was saying that the other area, after 35% being your paying on time, 30% is how much of your credit you use. If you have credit cards and the total outstanding credit available to you is $25,000 and your total balances all added up are $22,000 or $23,000, that's going to hurt your credit. We recommend having no more than 1/3 of your credit being used up. If 1/3 of your credit is used up, no more than that, that's going to do really well for your score, for that 30% of your score. So, looks like we're running out of time, folks, and it's time for me to wrap up the show. It was a pleasure to sit in for Mr. Stern today. He'll be back next week on Credit Talk. It was a pleasure to sit here again. My name's Larry Smith. I had a great time talking with you folks. For those of you who called in, I truly hope I answered your questions. For those of you who didn't call in and just sat in and listened on the show, I truly hope I gave you guys some insight as to what's going on out there. And if you're a victim of that Equifax breach, I hope you're not panicking too much, and we've given you some good insight as to what to do. Order your credit reports. Be vigilant. Keep checking them. Okay, folks? Thanks very much for watching Credit Talk today. I'm Larry Smith.